Hey Dave, how are you today?
Good, thanks. It's nice to be here with you.
It's nice to see you again. You're such a busy guy. Give me a sense. What's your day like? I feel like you do like 100 different things. What did you do today?
So, what did I do today? I woke up and had a bunch of meetings for different Apollo related things. And, we're working on science publishing clinical trials. We have seven trials that finished across 2,000 subjects in the last year, 2023. So, we have several of these that are in the publication pipeline to go out. So, I've spent a lot of time working on that, which is exciting work, but, it takes a while. I had the usual patients, team lunch, and now we're here. I have really good help though. So that is a big reason why I can, we can get a lot done. You can't do it all on your own.
That's the key, right? Offload and then do what we do best. I have an Apollo Neuro on my ankle right now in social mode because it's sort of end of day for me. I think it's sort of end of day for you too. And I find that really helpful. I have to tell you, I wear my Apollo so much. It was originally black. It's not now. It's like some kind of shiny brass color.
Yeah, the sweat effect or the alcohol cleaning effect.
I think some of it is just like rubbing against fabric and stuff.
Oh yeah, that'll do it. You're one of our super users. I think you've been using it, almost as much as we do for years now. So yeah, I'm really glad to hear that you're still enjoying it so much. We use it every day. I have it on my chest right now with the clip, which is really, really nice. I used to be an ankle user all the time. Now I'm a daytime chest user and ankle at night.
All right, but let's nerd out on position. Why the chest and not the ankle?
It's really personal preference. The main idea behind Apollo is that because it works through our sense of touch, you can wear it anywhere in your body. And as long as you feel it, you still get the effects. And the feeling is, the gentle, soothing waves of vibration. So as long as you feel that wherever it is on your body, it doesn't really matter. But because it's bass frequency, the frequency of Apollo is like what comes out of a subwoofer. So it's very deep bass sound. And that travels better through higher density material. So bone, walls, things that are more dense, concrete, make sound waves travel better through them, which is really interesting. And so we can really feel Apollo better in our bodies and low frequency vibration through bone. So the chest and the ankle are both very dense bones. And the sternum is one of the densest bones in the body. And so when you feel Apollo on your chest, you'll feel it almost immediately. It's very, very fast and immersive and requires a lower intensity. So my battery lasts like 1.5 times as long when I use it on my chest during the day because my intensity is 50% of what it is when I wear it on my ankle.
Right. I wear a Whoop at night and my sleep efficiency is consistently in the 90s.
That's great.
And if I wake up, there's like a new mode where it knows I've gone to the bathroom and it puts me back into sleep mode. Maybe addiction is too strong of a word, but I really enjoy it.
Yeah, no, that Smart Vibes premium release that is the first product ever to detect and prevent unwanted middle of the night wake ups. So that was our first take on how to use AI from getting valuable data from our power users like you, who were showing us that I think you were one of these people who would wake up in the middle of the night and tap your buttons on your Apollo and turn it back on again to fall back asleep. And so we were doing that, and a lot of other people were doing that. We saw it in the data, and we said, okay, well, what if we just train the AI to do that for people automatically? And then when we did that and that worked, we thought, well, what if we train the AI to predict when you're about to wake up, because Apollo tracks sleep. And if we can track your sleep and know when you're sleeping deeply, when you're sleeping restlessly, and when you're awake, then we can trigger Apollo when you start to sleep restlessly before you become awake. And then that can prevent you from waking up. So that's actually been really successful. We have over 8,000 people using that now, and it's improving sleep over an hour for people who wake up a lot in the middle of the night, which is amazing.
I know a lot of the women who listen to this podcast are experiencing hormonal changes, and I hear all the time about sleep. Possible solution there.
Sleep dysregulation, temperature dysregulation, mood dysregulation, especially in perimenopause and postmenopause, can be very challenging for many women. And we don't talk about this that much. We recently have been talking about it on our Apollo webinars and the psychedelic report to provide more education about women's health and sexuality, intimacy, and the healing benefits of it to the community. But this is not taught well at all. And, ultimately as we have more tools developed like this to help people sleep through the night when they are going through experiences like menopause, it makes things a lot easier on your day to day because you're getting more deep rest and you're more recovered, and it's not a drug. So it's, something you can just keep using that helps train your body to be more resilient and recovered over time.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a big fan.
I'm so glad to hear it.
Yeah, it's a really very effective product. I want to talk a little bit about psychedelics, if that's okay.
Sure.
You use some psychedelics clinically?
Ketamine is the only legal psychedelic federally at this point. So we use ketamine clinically. We can't really use anything else legally if you're a licensed clinician at this point.
And who would come to you and you would recommend ketamine for them?
I mean, so ketamine has a very interesting effect. It's not well explained, but we now know a lot more about it, especially from working with our patients. And what's really interesting about ketamine is it does something for an individual that we use very low dose, by the way. So it's much lower dose than they use in the operating room to put you under for surgery. And it's very safe, but we give a dose that's just gets you to a level of putting you into what's called observer mind. So we talk about this in therapy a lot, where you get it, or in mindfulness practice, where you get into a mind state where you can just kind of listen to yourself or watch yourself without judging yourself. And it's just observer mind. And you'll see judgmental thoughts come in, or you might see, different things come in, and you can just kind of acknowledge them and choose not to engage with them and let them pass. And you just watch your brain just kind of doing the thing that it's doing. And the first thing that people notice often in these experiences, when they do have ketamine experience for the very first time, is they notice, hey, there's a tape been playing in my brain. And that tape was recorded a really long time ago. And it's telling a story. And that story is the story of how I see myself in the world, right? It's how I was taught to look at the world, the words I was taught to use to describe the world around me and myself. Am I a good person? Do I think of myself as a bad person? Do I think of the world as a friendly place or a scary place, right? That's a story that gets taught to us and that we learn as human beings growing up. And so ketamine, the first ketamine experience, especially for people, when done properly, helps people kind of just become aware that they're telling themselves a story as they were taught, that they learned, and that it didn't necessarily come from them. And as soon as you start to realize that there's a tape playing the story, then you also can realize that we have the ability to revise that tape and re-record the updated story based on how we now know ourselves to be. So when you think about the way that ketamine works to help you rewrite your own story in the context of psychotherapy, you're basically just updating your software through a drug-induced hour-long dream state that has talk therapy on both sides, and often during. And when you do that protocol several times, maybe it takes 10, 15 times to get to you to, full story rewriting, like living a new life. We're talking, people are entering remission from depression, PTSD, in some cases, anxiety disorders, OCD, and a number of other conditions, in mental health conditions that are challenging, ADHD. People are learning how to focus better. But I think the main use of ketamine is depression and PTSD right now.
I just want to touch on some of the specifics of this. When you say low dose, this is an IV dose, and how big is the dose you're giving people?
So the dose that we give people is about, is a range, but depending on your height, weight, age, and sensitivity, if you've had prior experiences or not. But usually it ranges from 50 to 150 milligrams. So that's something like I would say that's like 25% to 10% of the dose that you would get if you were going into surgery. So it's a very low dose compared to what we use in pregnant women and children and animals for going into surgery. So the dose is low, but it gets you to a point where, in that dose range of about 50 to 150 milligrams, which can be administered lots of different ways. We do oral, sublingual administration through the mouth. We do intramuscular injections. We do IV. It just depends. Intramuscular, oral tend to be the best way that we use ketamine for a lot of reasons. But ultimately, those doses get people to a point of that observer mind we were talking about earlier.
And then there's a therapist in the room, bookending with talk therapy to talk about the experience, and then somebody with you during the experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best practices to date, and you can check this out in our manuscript we published, a review article on best practices in psychedelic medicine in Journal of Affective Disorders in 2023. But basically, best practices today are, two therapists, ideally one male, one female, it doesn't have to be. And then you do at least 2 sessions, just talk therapy without medicine before you ever touch ketamine or touch any medicine in therapy. Then you have the ketamine administration, which is like a 3-hour session with 2 therapists. And you talk a little bit before to set your intention and get prepared for the experience. Then you take the medicine. That takes about 60 to 90 minutes. Some people talk during it. Some people don't talk at all. Then we talk after the medicine is worn off, and we wrap the session. And then the following day, we do another hour-long session because a lot of things become more clear in the first 24 hours after the experience. And so we do another session, talk therapy, no medicine, for an hour within 24 hours of the first experience. And that really like concretes what people are learning from it. And then usually there's a 3 to 6 dose course over 3 to 12 weeks. So people take more than one dose, and each dose builds on the one before. But there's always therapy in between to make sure you're unpacking what you're learning.
And integration, I guess, is the word on that.
Yeah.
I brought up something that I wanted to chat with you about that we touched on before we went on the call today, that I had an experience last night with a couple of friends of mine who are very successful professionals managing big stuff out in the world. These are not hippy dippy people. And they're both big meditators to a couple hours a day for like decades. And so the conversation sort of veered into this talking about, this sounds really like kooky, but like time travel and astral projection and things like this from meditation, which is something that I think is sort of related to not ketamine psychedelics, but other psychoactive things. They were rather convinced that we will all be doing these things in a not so distant future, and that we just don't have the science to prove these things. And what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I would argue that we don't just have the science to explain some of these phenomena, but we also don't have the language, right? So time travel may not be accurately explaining what your friend is experiencing. There may be elements of it, right? But maybe, I don't know what he's experiencing from that. My understanding of time travel might be different, right? But I think when we, I don't know, have you ever had a dream where you go back to a different time of your life?
Yeah.
Right. So that, for all intents and purposes, many people might consider time travel, but it's in a dream. So when you take a psychedelic medicine in the right context, whether it's ayahuasca in the jungle or ketamine in the clinic, many people report having these experiences that are very vivid, extremely vivid, as if they were actually there with a younger version of themselves, or as the younger version of themselves, experiencing something from the past, or watching themselves re-experience something from the past. And I think a lot of people liken that to time travel. Is it time travel like in the cartoons or Back to the Future? Not exactly. I think that in a lot of ways is a state that we can train ourselves to get into through deep, introspective, meditative experiences that have been talked about for thousands of years in ancient Ayurvedic and yogic, and even Buddhist cultures. Tibetan Buddhist culture in particular talks about time dilation and how you can expand the present moment by just being more present in it, and knowing the moment is really what creates a sense of timelessness in life. And time is a perspective thing, right? So if you're taught to think about time as never being enough, then that's the way you're going to think about and experience life through that lens. And if you're taught to think about time from like a be here now, Ram Dass Tibetan perspective, then you're going to have a tendency to be a lot more present and in the moment, and not looking at everything like it's a rush. So I think there's a lot of ramifications of these different kinds of ways of thinking that psychedelic medicine can teach us, and also meditation can teach us.
Okay, I just wanted to get your thought on that. Because I thought wow, that's interesting. I wonder what that's like. So a lot of what we're talking about here is something that's quite close to what we do at Ageist, which is expanding people's imagination of what's possible. Oftentimes, I find that this idea, as we get a little older, there's sort of a lid put on our imagination of what is possible, which did not exist. When we were like 5 or 8 years old, we could be Einstein or Joe DiMaggio or whatever. But all of a sudden, you get to a certain point. Okay, I realize I'm not going to do that, but everything gets like ratcheted down. The idea of the tapes are very limiting, that if we have a tape running in our heads. Also, this idea of moving the line on what's possible and impossible further out through some sort of mind expanding activity, maybe intense meditation or plant medicine or something like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of techniques for expanding the limits of our consciousness and our minds, what we know ourselves to be capable of. And the practices we've been talking about, the meditation, yoga, breathing techniques, introspection, all psychedelic medicines, Apollo, all of these are techniques to help us do that, or tools to help us do that. But I think the core of that comes from an understanding internally, which requires us to ask ourselves a very important question. And this is a question I ask every single client when they start working with me, which is it possible to, and I ask them to ask themselves this question, right? Is it possible that what I was taught I'm capable of in this life is not the full story? Almost every single person I've ever talked to, if not every person, has said, yes, it's possible that what I was taught was not the full story about what I can do as a human being. So if people can answer that, then it kind of just subtly unlocks this door or just budges it a little bit. That is the door to the unknown about ourselves, right? And what is all the good stuff that might be lurking behind that door that I've never opened? Because I've always thought that I was one way and I was capable of this set of things. Now I was just, made a little tweak in my brain that helped me understand that by answering that simple question, maybe there's more that I can get out of life. Maybe there's more that I can accomplish. And I think that in actuality, anything is possible, right? Like what I would ask you is prove to me that something is impossible. It's pretty darn hard, right? But you can prove that something's possible by trying. That's something we can do. If you think about, this core understanding of like the unknown and possibility and this kind of thing, we can't limit ourselves by creating a box that we live in. I mean, we do this all the time. This is what most people do is, we create these boxes that we live in, and then it prevents us from seeing what's outside the box. There's everything outside the box, right? Literally everything exists outside the box. Inside the box, it's just that story. It's that tape playing of how we were taught to see ourselves in the world. Outside the box is every other possibility. So we self-impose that box. And by not being aware that we're in that box and that tape is playing in that box on repeat in the echo chamber, right? We actually directly impose the inability to transform ourselves, to reach our highest potential, or even have any idea of what that is, because we are not aware that there's a tape playing in this box that we've created for ourselves. And it's nobody's fault. Like the sooner you just realize that you're in this box with tape playing, the sooner you can step out of it and take it off, right? But it's just that awareness. So that's kind of like where everything really starts. And that's why mindfulness and meditation, just to take it all the way back, are so powerful, and how psychedelic experiences are also so powerful is because they are rapidly mind expanding, awareness expanding experiences that help you realize, even if it's just for a brief moment, that you're wearing a box on your head with a tape playing inside.
I once had a mental health professional tell me in a social setting, every human being has 3 core fundamental delusions about themselves. They are core, they're fundamental. And because they're so fundamental to how we see ourselves, it's impossible for us to look at that, right? We need somebody else outside to say, David, you may think you're blue, but you're not.
Right.
So how do you go about showing people you think whatever about yourself, this is not true?
It's a good question. I mean, it really gets down to the core of like the origins of talk therapy, because talk therapy and journaling are about taking those thoughts that we have in our heads about ourselves and the world and the story we're telling ourselves, and then getting that out onto some third party. So that could be paper, It could be a voice recorder, or it could be another person that you're talking to, like a therapist, or even a friend if you have non-judgmental friends that you feel comfortable talking about, vulnerable stuff to. But the point is that just by getting it out, voice or on paper, as soon as it comes out, you're hearing what you're saying, right? So that's feedback loop number one that gets engaged, that starts to give you insight into, oh my God, this is how I think about myself, right? So that's number one loop. Then journaling is the same thing. You write it down, you read what you wrote. The next loop level of feedback that helps us gain what we call insights, the ability to look inside ourselves and make change. The next level is you listen. If you recorded yourself, you hear yourself recording yourself, then you go back and listen to it again, right? Now you have another opportunity to self-reflect and be like, oh, wow, that's the way I think about myself. That's the way I think about the world. Maybe that's not accurate with the way I know the world to be. Maybe I have evidence in my life that shows me over the last X number of months, years, whatever, that's not the way the world actually is anymore for me. Maybe things are better than they seem, different than they seem, right? So that's feedback loop number two. And then if you have a therapist, it's even better. A good therapist will listen to you. They will help you get out some of these thoughts about yourself by asking you good questions and asking you about how you feel about and think about yourself and different things, and get the voice out. Once you get it out, go through loop number one, and then you go through loop number 2 and 3, which is the therapist repeats back to you what it is that they hear you saying from their perspective. Should not be judgmental. It should be just, I hear you saying the following about yourself and about the way you see the world. And then you get another layer of feedback, right? Where you're like, oh, wow, this is now what I'm saying as interpreted by an independent observer. Like, wow, I really might be thinking about myself like really terrible, or maybe I do treat myself like I'm not worthy of love, or that I'm a bad person, or I'm not deserving of good things, or whatever it is. Right. But the point is that through these layers of constant feedback, which are all healthy, normal things, we should all be doing these all the time. We'd all have to spend a lot less time in therapy and have a lot less problems in life if we all did at least one of these 3 things: the journaling, talking to people, voice recording, your venting and things like that. And then, and talking to a therapist, every month or something like that, just getting it out.
Okay. So now I have information. I've been educated. I've educated myself. I've listened to the words that I've said about myself. How do you make the move from that to behavior change? Because it's different.
Yes, they are different. And the first step is just identification and awareness that maybe what we're doing is not helpful to us, right? So that's step one. And we can call that, like, there's lots of names for it. I like to think about it from the CBT perspective, cognitive behavioral therapy, which thinks about this as like thought questioning. So you're just questioning your thoughts and you're not paying any attention to the stuff that's not useful or true to you in any moment. All those thoughts just get kind of like left behind for now. And then the action comes from even just starting, as you start to notice yourself letting go of paying attention to useless and untrue thoughts that don't serve you, noticing with awareness when you start to judge yourself, or when you start to think about yourself in these different ways, you start to practice, you replace that practice of judgment with the practice of gratitude, right? So that's like behavior change number 1 that we talk about. And so it's literally, we call it like the gratitude interception. So it's like gratitude intercepts judgment because you can use it to be grateful for the awareness that you were judging yourself, right? Usually what happens is, for most of us, we judge ourselves, then we judge ourselves for judging ourselves, and that's called the judgment trap. So you can avoid the judgment trap by catching yourself in any moment that you're judging yourself and say, hey, actually, I can find gratitude in the awareness that I just noticed myself judging myself, and I can step out of this loop. I can step out of the trap. And so that's behavior change number 1. And then you can be grateful for whatever your next activity is, right? I'm taking control of my attention and I'm going to take a deep breath right now. Then you can be grateful for taking a deep breath, right? And then you just keep choosing gratitude and finding things to be grateful for. And you're training that emotional muscle of gratitude, which is the first step in behavior change to regain control of our agency and our attention and where all like human intentional willpower goes.
I'm going to go back to the box. So I've been in the box for 65 years and I've been listening to the tapes in the box. And my theory of David's aging is that I was sort of a whole person at about like age 1 or 2. And then there's a series of sort of like fracturing and shattering. And then age is sort of like a reassembly. And I feel like at 65, I'm more me than I've ever been because I'm gradually putting these pieces together.
That's a good way to think about it.
Okay. But I've been in the box. I'm still in the box. I'm listening to the tape. And now I realize, as you said, everything is outside of the box. This is a much bigger thing than inside the box. Incorporating that sort of limitless possibility, like I thought impossible was because I'm in the box, I'm hitting the inside of the box, I can't go anywhere. And now you've let me know, well, actually, there's a box. Step outside the box, please.
Take it off.
Right? I take the box off. And now it's like, oh my gosh, there's all this stuff. That seems amazing to me. And how does that get incorporated in? It's a big change.
Yeah, I think then we have to be really intentional, right, about what we learn and what we decide to take in as information. Because if everything is outside the box, then we want to be extra careful about what it is that we decide to spend our time on. And that can be something that's helpful to us, or it can be something that's unhelpful to us if everything's
right.
Right. So it's really about understanding, hey, I want to step outside the box and take some time to learn about astral projection, right? Or deep, deep levels of meditation from different yogic and indigenous lineages. That's a really interesting thing to do. It's rooted in thousands of years of knowledge that is about self-actualization and continuing this path of learning about you and learning about the world. It has a very rigorous and long-standing relationship to helping us understand life and the connection between humanity and the earth and the universe. So all of this stuff is like very, very important. And that holds a lot of merit because it's been around for so long and it's been, tested and replicated in all of these ways. And we now are starting to understand how a lot of these ancient meditators' brains work, which is really interesting. You could also choose to learn anything from Scientology to something about the cartoon universe or something that's completely fiction based and not related to reality. And if that's what your choice is, then that's what you're going to learn and what your brain is going to automate and take in. So that's why we call psychedelic experiences, and not just psychedelic experiences, but the experiences that are induced by psychedelic medicines as non-specific amplifiers of awareness. So they're really expanding awareness to anything and everything that you could be aware of. They're not dictating what's coming in. It's us that kind of dictates and allows different content to come in based on the intention with which we enter the experience. So does that make sense?
Intention is the word there, because otherwise, as you said, everything is outside the box and everything is a big thing. And I can't do that.
Right.
So I need some guardrails, I need some direction. And I'm guessing that sort of leading up to this, there's a discussion about and an understanding about what I feel my purpose, my usefulness, my mission out in the world is supposed to be. And now that I'm out, I can use that to focus on things.
Yeah, I can dispel some myth about that I think neuroscience is showing about our mission evolutionarily and like what the meaning of us being here is. Because I think that's a question that bugs a lot of people to not know. But I think we know. I think I think the mystery's up in terms of like having to solve the puzzle of why we're here. Like if you really look at ancient traditions and modern science together, like the purpose of us being here in this life is to discover what we're capable of in this life. It's to discover what our superpower is in this life, right? Like every human being has super talents in certain areas and we don't know how to find them yet. We don't know how to help people discover them yet. We try to create opportunities for self-discovery, but ultimately each of our individual missions and the source of meaning in all of our lives as individuals is to self-discover ourselves. And nothing is more important than that. And when we start to step out of the box, the single thing that every single person gets when they realize they're in a box or they've been wearing a box and trapped in it and they take it off, the single thing that every single human experiences in common is hope, right? Because hope, it comes with this reopening of your childlike imagination again to the idea that anything is possible for us. right? We can do anything. We can heal ourselves. We can learn new things. We can learn lots of different things. We can become exceedingly talented in different areas. My dad learned how to play jazz piano at 75 years old, right? Nobody thought that used to be possible. But there's lots of other people who are older, learning new things, and who are learning new things and becoming expert in them. And that's really incredible. So I think as soon as we step out of our own limitations, then we have hope that we can actually be a major decider and produce a major impact in our own lives. Change becomes something we can control. And that's really interesting.
The word optimism is coming to mind.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what we need more than anything else, right? Like, we need to be hopeful. Hope is something that it's almost like a skill as well, right? It's something you practice that you get better at. And that's critically important to healing and recovery and transformation and change and optimization, which is related to optimism as a word root. So, I think these things are all related, and it's very important for us to be hopeful. It's something we should be teaching to everyone. All children should be taught how to be hopeful, and adults need to relearn it.
My endless mission in life is self-improvement, to the amusement of all those around me. They always ask me, what am I doing when I'm working on something to make myself better? Because when I was a kid, I was told to sort of ratchet everything down, right? Don't go big, go average. And my reaction to that is a lifelong mission of self-improvement. And I tell people, become the best version of yourself, whatever that is. And I love this idea of identifying each of our personal superpower. To do that, there's so much here, Dave. Out of the box, you need a certain sense of optimism to even go into this, right? Or you wouldn't do it.
That's why I asked that question I brought up to you earlier, right? It all comes from asking the right questions. We can get any answer we want. If we don't ask the right questions, we're not going to get the answer we're looking for. So the question is it possible that what you were taught about yourself that you are capable of in this lifetime is not the full story, right? That's a very, very simple question. As soon as you ask that question, almost everybody will say yes, if not everyone. And as soon as you can admit that there's some doubt in that story you were told, all of a sudden you start to ask yourself, are we writing the story? Is that possible? What can I change? What can I not change? Right? It just gets the old ticker moving.
That's right. I've given some thought about why some people take better care of themselves than others. We all know eating Twinkies is bad. We all know there are certain things that are obvious, like vaping. This is not a good thing, but some people still do it. I think what's missing in so much of the conversation about this sort of health and wellness out of the world, it's not about information, and it's not about the resources to act on the information. It's having this sense of we all do this ROI in our heads. Will this work for me? Will it not? That's the hope optimism thing. So if you have that, okay. If you don't have that, I don't care how many times I tell you this is not going to work out for you.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of echoes with our understanding of what the placebo effect is, right? So the placebo effect is the effect of belief on your treatment outcomes. So if you believe that your treatment will work, it's for a mental health indication, it's 30 to 50% more likely to work. For a physical health indication, it's 20 to 30% more likely to work if you believe it will work. If you don't believe it will work, that's called the nocebo effect. It's even stronger than the placebo effect. So the more you believe something will not work for you of any kind, the less likely it is to work. So there's something going on there, right? Something going on there that has an effect that could be 30 to 50% of your outcome.
That's right.
Just due to belief alone.
Oh my gosh. We were going to start this conversation and talk about vibration therapy, and we talked about
it's all related, right? I mean, I think to go back to that, when we're in a state of stress and we're feeling confined by the box and we can't get out, we're overwhelmed, we're frustrated, but we want to get out, we tend to do bad habits and continue to eat junk food and not exercise and use drugs and drink and do all the things that we shouldn't be doing because they're familiar to us. And familiarity conveys safety because it's something we know. So there's a certain level of certainty that comes with familiarity, that even though I know smoking and drinking and junk food are all bad for me, because I know what those things are and I'm familiar with them, I will continue to use them because the idea of change in and of itself means newness, and newness means potential uncertainty, and evolutionarily, uncertainty means threat. And so our bodies are physiologically opposing change and newness, even if that newness is helpful to us and makes our lives better when we're already stressed out, which is the most important time to make a change. Or if you're already sick, it's harder to make lifestyle changes. And that's the most important time to make the lifestyle changes, right? So it's important to understand that our bodies evolved this way. This is not just something wrong with you or me, that it's hard to get better or hard to make habit changes when we're not feeling good, or when, we are feeling good, but we're not feeling at our best. It's hard to make changes because stress on the body and illness impairs our biological ability to adapt, to change, and to learn new things, and to make sure those new learned things stick and actually go into long-term memory in our REM sleep, which we lose when we're stressed out, right? So you can see how all these things are kind of connected. And so Apollo works, this soothing vibration tool that we're both wearing, works by sending these gentle, soothing vibrations that are that convey safety to the body, just as if you were taking a deep breath. And then that tells the nervous system that it can boost vagal nerve activity and that you're safe enough to learn. You're safe enough to make a behavior change. You're safe enough to embrace change or the unknown at all, because we literally run or hide from the unknown when we are under stress. It's scary. So it's about feeling safe enough to embrace the unknown, feeling safe enough to ask the harder questions about ourselves, about what we're capable of, feeling safe enough to control our attention, to set intention. All of these things come from and are unlocked by the safety techniques, whether it's Apollo or deep breathing or meditation or yoga or movement or any of these other things that we talked about.
Okay, last question. We're almost done. The unknown. We are in a state of multiple revolutions going on. We're in a state of information revolution, a biotech revolution, I would say a demographic revolution, and there's also kind of a crazy societal political stuff going on. If we look forward 10 years, so we're going to say 2034, what do you see us as humans being in 10 years? That's a big question, right?
I mean, hopefully kinder to each other, more collaborative, less afraid of each other, less isolationist, less selfish, because that's the only way we're going to get to 10 years from now. As an intact society that we are today, there's a lot that can happen in 10 years. I hate to say it, but we're not on as far as a species of human beings that we are, that has always focused on making decisions or attempting to work together to make decisions to overcome great tragedies and natural disasters and all these things. We have this impending natural disaster of, climate change in front of us that is directly related to how much waste we produce. And we're having a really hard time managing the balance of production versus waste production and, natural resource consumption and our sustained survival on the earth, right? There has to be a balance that's maintained. Just like in our bodies, you can't deprive your body of nutrients and shove toxins in it and expect it to continue to survive and function at a high level. So the earth is no different. And so, I think in general, a lot of the decisions that we're making as a society are not aligned with our, continuation of the kind of life that we have in 10 years. And it's going to require us to embrace what neuroscience has shown for probably the last 30 to 50 years, but that we've known about for much longer, which is the power of the collective, right? It's not about me having everything that you have in duplicate because we are not willing to share. It's about us sharing, because sharing is actually caring. It's caring for each other and it's caring for the earth, right? We don't need everybody to have all their own stuff. We need people to have enough stuff to do all the things they need to do to raise their kids and to be, comfortable and have enough food and water and waste disposal and all of these things, and to be really comfortable and have good lives where they can achieve their potential and they can self-discover themselves. But beyond that, right, we're creating a lifestyle that popularizes excess and waste. And that's not compatible with sustaining human life. So, and it popularizes selfishness, which is the least compatible with sustaining human life on this earth. So for us to get over that it's really going to be about recognizing that we're all human first. And before we're anything else, before we're any race or any size or shape or age, we are human first, all of us, right? And once we recognize that, we recognize we all need the same things: food, water, air, shelter, love, and connection to other human beings, and sleep, right? Those are the things we all need to survive. So we can give everybody those things. We've had that ability for a really long time. As soon as we give everybody those things, then the world will be a sustainable place where, it'll be friendly and safe to travel in most places, which it's not right now. That is what needs to change. And that's what's going to be a combination of the revolutions of psychedelics, health and medicine, AI, and technology that really drives forward this convergence of community.
What I heard you say earlier was that we are evolutionarily predisposed to familiarity, and change leads to stress. When we're stressed, we don't want to change. So we get scared. Scared people close down, the box gets smaller. If I take this a little further, if we want to save the world and it's going to talk sensibly to people, it's about lowering the stress and lowering the threat level so that then things become accessible. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what psychedelic medicines are teaching us, I think, right? Is you give somebody, and talk therapy, is you give somebody a psychedelic medicine, or they have a really powerful experience with a therapist, and they feel safe enough to see that they are actually a lot more like everybody else than they might have been taught, but also special in their own way. And they start to discover that internal specialness, that internal connection to the divine, to their own connection to spirituality that's for them, right? And these kinds of experiences are extremely life transforming for people because they connect us back to that kind of core essence of just being safe in our own bodies. And when we're safe in our own bodies, our bodies can thrive under change. We're not afraid. We don't run from it. We really embrace it, because that's where all the richness and of diversity and the beauty of life is. It's all changing every day. We're not the same one day to the next. We are changing every single day, every moment of every day. We are growing, right? For us to deny that is just ignoring the fact that what's actually happening is happening. So if science has shown us that we're changing every day, and every moment of every day we're constantly growing, then let's rethink what we mean about stability. Let's focus on something that actually makes sense, which is change. Change is everything, right? So let's embrace change. Let's embrace adaptability. Let's embrace the collective adaptability skill set that we have as human beings to work together to overcome really, really hard problems. That is the way that we have a really, really good life in the next 10 years, and not a major step down.
Amazing. Dave, I feel like I learned so much. I feel like I should get a therapist, and then I would get outside of my box. It's been such a pleasure. And thank you for the creation of the Apollo Neuro. To me, sleep is sacred. I can't do anything without good sleep. And I put a lot of emphasis on that. And that's like one of the primary tools in my toolkit to sleep well. So thank you for that.
Yes, my pleasure. It's changed our lives too. So really glad to hear that you enjoy it so much. It's music to my ears.
I do. Thanks so much. You're a busy guy. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks, David.
Take care, Dave. Bye-bye.